From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, this is Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Riley Smith. In today's show, Mark has another clip from the latest episode of Pods of Potential. I talk about driving calf value with Chris Thomsen of Merck Animal Health, and Dustin discusses succession planning with Mike Downey of Uncommon Farms. Now let's welcome in our hosts, Mark Magnuson and Dustin Huffman.
Well, of course, the countdown to the Iowa State Fair continues, but we are also counting down to tomorrow's release of the crop reports and the WASDE report from USDA. The August reports have the chance to move the markets, Dustin, as we think about those updated yield numbers that will be coming out from USDA. A lot of the private areas of the ag industry are trying to come up with their estimates and predictions for what those yield numbers will look like. And then we will get the reaction to that tomorrow, as we've kind of seen a dip in the markets here today ahead of those reports. But a lot of information we will learn tomorrow. Also, those updated acreage numbers to see if they line up from the numbers earlier in the year. And there is a lot that will be reacted to tomorrow right at 11 o'clock when those reports are out. I was, of course, speaking with Eric Rolfe of Comstock yesterday, and he had mentioned that he's really interested to see the lead up to the 10 o'clock hour, because that's kind of when everyone will have their positions squared away going into those reports that will be released at 11 tomorrow, and then we will get that immediate reaction.
Yeah, and of course, there's a lot of things being watched as well as things going on around the world. And of course, President Trump issued his list of demands to Iran over the war. We know that Iran has released their demands, including wanting billions of dollars in payments from the United States, and also that they want the blockade lifted. President Trump did say that he was perfectly fine letting economic starvation work rather than having to use a military strike. But also now the president came back with his own kind of demands or requirements he would need for a peace deal, and that's put more pressure on the fact that the markets now know that there is really, even though it's been a peaceful negotiation situation, there's really any hope of seeing the Strait of Hormuz opening up right now has faded, and so that's putting pressure on the markets. But there's also, without any actual attacks, we're also looking at the fact that oil is under a little bit of pressure, and but there's a lot of weight on it. But again, of course, a lot of it's on weather. August so far, while it's been a little humid, has not been really stressful for the plants, and especially as soybeans go into that pod fill, that is definitely good news for the producers, because any stress that you put on those beans, I mean, they are a little bit more susceptible to it than the corn is when it goes through its pollination. But it's still, you want to make sure that you don't put any pressure on. And if this weather being what it is, this is not pressuring those plants at all. And in fact, it's giving them a really good spot to anchor down on and make these changes and make this production, I should say, of its beans. So a lot of things being watched. And we're looking for something to break through. Now, president did say about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock this morning that he believes that they are up to some kind of a peace arrangement with Iran. But again, we'll have to wait and see how that turns out.
And then speaking of world news as well, Dustin, when it comes to agriculture, we also have seen China ramping up purchases of U.S. soybeans. Of course, that's after the May meeting with President Trump and President Xi of China. And China has purchased 238,000 metric tons of U.S. soybeans last week, as they're working their way towards some of those goals that they had originally committed to, quote unquote, kind of the handshake agreement. And this is also, we're watching for further trade signals ahead of an expected meeting between the two leaders that is coming up in September.
Yeah, and so there's a lot on the board here to be watching for, and it could have a lot of impact on what's happening in those markets. And we'll go ahead and start off those markets, the grain side of it, talking right now with Joe Camp of Comstock and Mark Magnuson.
Joined today by Joe Camp of Comstock. Joe, what's happening with the trade in the grains?
Grain futures are a bit easier here. We've got the weather factor in place, some rains moving across the upper Midwest. We're talking about heavy winds to watch out for, but more moisture on the way as well. And so that extends from what has been a more negative weather market influence over the last several sessions, really since the end of July, the transition into August, those weekend rains developing, and then leading us to where we're at today, which is a wetter forecast, still biased heavier in the east versus the west. We can't ignore these places that are still facing drought stress, the southern plains up into Nebraska as well. But you have that focus on production and potential improving in places ahead of this crop report that we've got out now tomorrow on Wednesday the 12th. The August numbers come out that look at yield estimates changing for the first survey-based estimates of the year, also the wild card of acreage and that big bearish surprise that we had for corn rising last year in the back of our minds here. So a bit lower on the weather front, a bit quiet on the demand end as well, and wait and see type mode for sure ahead of the crop report.
And Joe, are traders right now basing their positions on those yield estimates, meaning that we will have probably a reaction one way or the other based on the actual numbers in the reports?
I would say so. You're certainly subject to being right or wrong when you see these trade ranges, both looking for yields to go lower and higher on the other end of it. The average guesses, the consensus view is that the corn and soybean yields will drop just slightly. This is a change, again, survey-based estimates from the previous trend projections. The model-based numbers coming in were 183 bushels per acre for corn, 53 bushels per acre for soybeans. So again, the average guess is somewhere around 182.4 for corn, 52.9. So just nominal reductions here. I talked about acreage on the other side. So if you have yield go down, you don't necessarily have to see production drop because acreage can climb. So something for everybody, and it won't just be the supply side. Less focused on demand in the August report, but still possible changes on those items like exports. Corn exports have been phenomenal. They continue to be, as we see demand picking up once again from our top customer, Mexico, and then that storyline with soybean exports to China having accelerated as of late.
This year at the Iowa State Fair, Fair Spirit meets 250 years of American history in a celebration across the fair. See the America 250 Iowa display and a permanent sculpture created just for the fair. Walk the Iowa Veterans Memorial Walkway honoring service and sacrifice. Experience 250 years of the American flag, along with red, white, and blue contests and fair favorites. Then look to the sky for drone shows glowing in red, white, and blue, lighting up the fair like never before. From history to celebration, it all comes together at the Iowa State Fair. Learn more at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters, and having healthy animals is obviously the key to being successful and getting your best return on investment. Riley talks now with the folks at Merck Animal Health.
With calves representing a high-value investment, new auction data shows buyers are willing to pay more when calves have a clear health history. Chris Thomsen, Beef Technical Services Veterinarian with Merck Animal Health, talked about what management programs and health protocols drive added value and how producers can better position their calves to capture it.
Superior Livestock Auction, Kansas State University, and Merck Animal Health work together to evaluate auction data to find out what management decisions, programs, and health protocols are the big drivers when it comes to the price paid by buyers. The 2025 data set includes information for more than 860,000 calves.
Thomsen said a preconditioning program can add a substantial amount of value.
One of the biggest takeaways is the value a preconditioning program can add. These programs involve a series of vaccinations and management practices such as weaning, deworming, and transitioning calves to dry feed. Just as importantly, they create a clear documented health story that signals to buyers those calves are ready for the next phase of production. The data showed following a VAC 45 program can add more than $51 per head to your calves at the sale.
Thomsen said their PrimeVac program can be tailored to each individual operation so producers can make sure their efforts are recognized at the auction.
I think one of the biggest things a producer can do is to work with their local veterinarian and develop a program that works for them in the area that they live in. We at Merck Animal Health offer our PrimeVac program, and that involves the respiratory protection of our Bovillus Vista vaccines and the clostridial coverage of our vision vaccines. That can be tailored to each individual operation. You know, we can do things like internal parasite control, we can add implants in. And the nice thing is at the end of the day, the producer ends up with a certificate that can be signed by the veterinarian showing exactly what they've done.
Thomsen also talked about some of the deeper data regarding implants.
When we look at this data historically, there has not been a difference in price per pound paid between implanted and non-implanted calves. When we look at that, if we add an implant into calves 2 months of age or older, we're going to get on average about 23 pounds more weaning weight. These calves are going to be a little bit leaner, might have a slight increase in frame size as well. So if we look at our average price from 2025 and multiply by those 23 pounds, we're looking at an $85 per head advantage compared to those calves that weren't implanted. That's a return on investment of over 40 to 1. And if we look at what the cattle market's done since then, it's gone up. So those pounds are worth more. That return is over 50 to 1. So if you combine an implant and a VAC 45 program, you can potentially add over $135 per head to your calves.
Thomsen said there are also some other key findings from the collaboration.
Some of the other things that we found that do add value when we're selling calves include selling pulled calves, whether they're naturally pulled or we dehorn at a young age. That medium to large frame size tends to have a higher sale price. Uniform lots play a big role. People want to buy cattle that are fairly even across the board, and that adds a decent premium. And using progressive genetics as well is another thing that can add value. There's other marketing and nutrition programs that can also add value, but every producer's got to run the numbers and see if those programs are going to work for them and make sure that the return on investment is there.
To learn more about the Superior Livestock Auction data set, visit primevac.com. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Riley Smith reporting. Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland, the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
Time to run down those basis numbers for you here on Iowa Ag Matters on this Tuesday. I'm Dustin Huffman. Taking a look at cash bids around the state, only 4 elevators making any kind of changes to their bids. Let's run them down. ADM Burlington, 28 cents under on corn, $4.10. Soybeans, 32 cents under, $11.45. Cargill and Eddyville, 12 cents under on corn, cash bid, $4.26. New Co-op Algona, 27 cents under on corn, $4.11. Soybeans, 25 cents under at $11.52 for the cash price. Ag State Sheldon, 19 cents under on corn, $4.19. Soybeans, 35 cents under at $11.42. Ag State Delta, 26 cents under on corn, $4.12. Soybeans, 30 cents under at $11.47 for the cash bid. Cargill Cedar Rapids, 9 cents under on corn, cash price $4.29. Soybeans a nickel over at $11.82. 5-Star Co-op Nashua, 30 cents under on corn, $4.08. Soybeans, 35 cents under, $11.42. Lincoln Way Energy Nevada, 20 cents under on corn, $4.18. ADM Des Moines, 5 cents over on soybeans. The cash price there, $11.82. New Co-op Red Oak, 20 cents under on corn, $4.18. Soybeans, 15 cents under, $11.62. Mid-Iowa Cooperative Green Mountain, 42 cents under on corn, $3.96. Soybeans, 50 cents under at $11.27. New Co-op Sheraton, 24 cents under on corn, $4.14. Soybeans, 20 cents under. Cash price, $11.57. Walk-On Feed Ranch, 48 cents under on corn, $3.90. Soybeans, 67 cents under, $11.10. New Co-op Glidden, 26 cents under on corn, $4.12 for the cash bid. Soybeans, 20 cents under at $11.57. Innovative Ag Services Farley, 41 cents under on corn, $3.97. Soybeans, 69 cents under, cash bid $11.08. And the Cargill Muscatine, they're 30 cents under on corn at $4.08. Soybeans are 45 cents under, cash price $11.32. Cash corn and soybean bids are subject to change without notice. Always check with your local elevator when making sales to obtain the most recent price. And that's been a rundown of your cash bids here on Iowa Ag Matters. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this message.
Rod Stewart.
When I see you tonight.
A special evening with the icon.
On a downtown train.
A night of hit. After hit. After hit. With special guest Richard Marks. Friday, August 14th. Iowa State Fair Grandstand. Reserve tickets on sale now through iowastatefair.org. Don't miss an electrifying event. Friday, August 14th. Rod Stewart. Live.
This is Iowa Ag Matters on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, and Dustin going to give us something to think about here with succession planning on your farming operation. Here's Dustin with more.
Passing a farm from one generation to the next is rarely as simple as transferring land, equipment, or livestock. A farm can be a business, a family's livelihood, and something generations have spent their lives building. That can make conversations about its future difficult. Farm succession expert Mike Downey with Uncommon Farms has a personal connection to the issue. Neither of the family farms he grew up on are still around. He says one of the biggest obstacles to succession planning is the fear of getting it wrong. Farmers spend their careers learning and adjusting from one production year to the next, but when it comes to succession, Downey says families can feel as though they only have one opportunity to make the right choice.
There's the adage out there that farmers, ranchers have 40 chances. I think there's a book written, 40 chances, but a lot of cases I'm sitting across the table from people that have been farming for 50, 60 years. They've had 50 or 60 chances to get better every year at planting a crop or raising their livestock. But I think there's a perception or a fear that when it comes to succession planning for the future, we just have one shot, one chance to get something right that we don't have any practice at. So sometimes getting over that perception of that fear of what if we mess it up? What if we don't do it the right way? If we can get through that, for me, that really opens up, the gamut for the rest of the process to start putting that together.
Downey says succession planning does not have to be a one-time decision. Plans can evolve as the farm changes, family circumstances change, or members of the next generation determine whether they want to be a part of the operation. But before any of those decisions can be made, somebody has to be willing to start the conversation. Downey says that does not necessarily have to be the older generation. Sometimes younger farmers begin thinking about their own future, especially as they start families of their own. Other times, the parents may be ready to talk about succession, while the next generation has yet to decide what role they want.
I don't think I've met a farmer or rancher that I've worked with yet that hasn't communicated that they want to see the farm, the business continue, but it's such a difficult thing for them to even talk about. But yeah, I've seen young generation who is eager to step in and plan for their own future. Maybe they're starting to have a family. I've seen them reach out to help me engage my mom and dad. They just, for a reason, can't sit down and talk about it. I've also seen it the other way around, where mom and dad are, ready to engage, and next gen maybe isn't stepping up.
Those conversations can become complicated because farm succession involves more than determining ownership. There are questions about management, land equipment, and finances, along with the relationships between family members. Downey says that's one reason the outside third party can be valuable. Somebody who's not directly involved in the family that can help facilitate difficult conversations while also keeping attorneys, accountants, and other advisors moving towards the same goal. And even when everyone agrees that what they want the operation to do is continue, there can be a difficult question to answer. What happens to the generation currently running it? For many farmers, retirement does not necessarily mean reaching a certain age, collecting a final paycheck, and walking away. Farming may be what they've done their entire lives. And Downey says improvements in technology and reductions in physical labor are also allowing many producers to remain active longer.
The other thing I've thought a lot about is, the R word, retirement, does not exist a lot in farm families' vocabulary. That's another big difference maker between family farm businesses versus in town, where you don't see too many retirement roasting parties for farmers. But a lot of cases this is their culture, their identity, all they know. As they're getting older and able to farm longer because of technologies and less labor, why quit what we enjoy doing? In some cases, all we know to do. Don't have other hobbies and so forth. So that's another piece of this, as we see farmers able to farm longer and enjoy it. That can sometimes delay the conversation and the handoff, if you will, to the next generation.
But retirement does not necessarily mean having to leave the farm completely. You can have succession and involve transitioning into a different role. The older generation may continue doing the parts of the farming they enjoy while gradually turning management decisions and additional responsibilities over to the next generation. That transition can give the younger farmers an opportunity to begin leading the operation while the experience and knowledge of the previous generation is still available. The problem comes when families keep putting off those conversations until something forces them to act. Downey says health problems, changes in tax policy, or other major life events often become the trigger for succession planning. By then, families may be making some of the biggest decisions of their operation while dealing with a crisis or unexpected deadline. His message to farm families this year is not that they need to have every detail figured out immediately, but that they need to have the conversations.
My big message here in 2026 is, action, because if we eliminate other life events that are going to cause or motivate folks to do some planning, whether that's tax or health reasons, whatever it is, but, really think about the future of the business and the alignment. And usually that's where generations come together. They all are aligned that they'd like to see this continue. So what are 2 or 3 things that you can do here just in the next 30, 45 days? Because if we try to think about it all at one time, I've found that it paralyzes people. So just find those 2 or 3 things. It could be just simply sitting down and having a conversation. But sometimes those crucial conversations are more important than everything else than having the perfect documents and the structure and the tax planning in place.
Before assets change hands, the family needs to decide where they want to go in the first place. What does that farm and business look like in 10 and 15 years from now? And who wants to be involved? From there, families can work backward to determine management changes. For Iowa Ag Matters, I'm Dustin Huffman.
Looks like another perfect day to get out there and enjoy the summer.
You hear that? Live music, laughing kids, the roar of the rides, and someone yelling, "Corn dogs!" That's Fair Spirit at the Iowa State Fair, August 13th through 23rd in Des Moines. 11 days of blue ribbon traditions, big summer nights, incredible food, and the kind of memories you talk about all year long. This is your Iowa State Fair. Plan your visit now at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Your local radio station brings you the local news you depend on. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network complements that with ag news, weather, and market updates tailored for Iowa's farmers. Together, we deliver the best of both worlds, local connection and industry expertise. It's all to keep you connected with the heartbeat of the heartland. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, connecting rural Iowa with the news that matters to you.
This is the Midday Market Update on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson, joined today by Naomi Bloom of Total Farm Marketing for the Midday Market discussion. What's happening with the trade in the grain so far today?
Well, we are on day 5 of corn, soybeans, and wheat all testing important short-term support levels. So for the soybeans, actually for a little while, the market fell below support, the 100-day moving average. It hit a few sell stops. But as of 11 o'clock here, we are back holding support levels. So Dees corn has support near 459, 460. November beans have support near the 1170 area. Wheat holding support near 630 in the September Chicago wheat area. So we're just getting ready for tomorrow's USDA report, which, as we all know, is going to have so much data thrown at us. We're going to have to decipher everything on it from the domestic standpoint about production and demand in the United States, along with global production and demand.
What's happening on the livestock side of the trade here at midday?
Well, it's been pretty quiet and two-sided today for hogs and cattle and feeder cattle. Market is just testing some short-term support and resistance levels. We're waiting for better ideas of cash trade this week. I think in some respect, the livestock complex is waiting to see what this USDA has to say for the grain side of things tomorrow, and that'll help dictate price direction for the livestock as well.
And then with the hog side of the market, what's happening there today?
Yeah, so right now we've got hogs trading just a little bit lower. Nearby August, of course, getting ready to go off the board. October contract trading at 83.12. And so it's off the lows from just a few days ago, but can't seem to get through the 84 mark on the October contract. So it just feels a little bit more like technical trading for now, and we're waiting for fresh news.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
Yeah, feel free to give us a call at 800-334-9779 or check out our website, totalfarmmarketing.com.
Naomi Bloom, Total Farm Marketing, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it, and have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
That was Naomi Bloom with Total Farm Marketing. We will have a check of the numbers next.
No one knows your fields better than you, but it's hard to be everywhere at once. Sky Scout from Landis Cooperative helps you keep an eye on every acre throughout the growing season. Using aerial imagery and expert analysis, Sky Scout can help identify crop stress, stand concerns, nutrient issues, and other potential challenges before they become bigger problems. The result? More informed decisions and greater confidence in every pass across the field. Because the earlier you know, the more options you have. Talk with your Landis representative or call 515-817-2100 to learn more about Sky Scout today.
September corn down 1.5 at 436 3/4. September soybeans down 9 3/4 at 11.52. September soybean meal down 10 cents at 305.40. September soybean oil down $1.40 at 68.13. Chicago wheat down 10 cents at 630.5. Minneapolis wheat down 12 cents at 658. Kansas City hard red wheat down 10 3/4 at 702 3/4. September oats down 6 cents at 318. On the Merck, August live cattle up 5 cents at 233.33. August feeder cattle up 25 cents at 351. October lean hogs down 53 cents at 83.15. Class 3 milk down 10 cents at 16.62. That was a check of the midday markets on Iowa Ag Matters. I'm Mark Magnuson.
Back on Iowa Ag Matters, and we're going to head into that livestock marketplace. Cattle's been a little bit back and forth. Hogs had a good day yesterday, but seeming to be giving it back so far this morning. Mark Magnuson's going to rejoin the conversation with Joe Camp of Comstock Investments to talk about the livestock.
What's happening on the livestock side of the markets?
Split trade here with cattle higher, but hogs lower. We had a mostly firmer start to the week here. Cattle futures catching back up towards a more resilient cash trade. It's still that time of the year where we're thinking about possibly another run higher for beef prices, pork too for that matter, having the possibility of benefiting from into the summer consumer strength. We know the kids are going back to school soon here. People are wrapping up their vacations, but there's still that demand out there for barbecues, and now the coming BLT season as well. So on that front, we're going to watch the pork bellies and wondering if they can provide some leadership for the pork cutout, and then remembering again for beef and the cattle complex how August last year was the best month of the year. It was the best month for futures in part because they had leadership from cash prices, which had the incentive of beef prices turning back higher. And it's something to point out that beef cutout values are not far from where they were a year ago when they ultimately started to make another run to new highs leading into Labor Day. So we're watching the seasonal factor in an otherwise quiet mixed livestock trade for now.
What's the best way for our listeners to get in touch for more marketing information?
We'll be covering the crop report and the Comstock report. Access to that and all of our contact info, it's up at comstock.com.
Joe Camp of Comstock. Head to comstock.com for all of the marketing information and resources from the team. Joe, thanks so much for the time. Appreciate it, and have a great day.
Same. Thanks, Mark.
Looks like another perfect day to get out there and enjoy the summer.
You hear that? Live music, laughing kids, the roar of the rides, and someone yelling, "Corn dogs!" That's Fair Spirit at the Iowa State Fair, August 13th through 23rd in Des Moines. 11 days of blue ribbon traditions, big summer nights, incredible food, and the kind of memories you talk about all year long. This is your Iowa State Fair. Plan your visit now at iowastatefair.org.
August 13th through the 23rd.
Hi, my name is Ethan Smith, and I've been a certified crop advisor in Iowa for about 6 years. The Iowa CCA program is valuable to me because it helps keep me informed on new topics and research around the industry, including soils, insects, diseases, and much more. It's also a great way to network with others around the state and beyond. Iowa is known for its crops, and that's why we're here. To learn more about becoming a certified crop advisor, visit iowacca.org.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
I'm Mark Magnuson. Today we are discussing oxbow restorations, and we're here with our friends at the Iowa Soybean Association's Research Center for Farming Innovations. I'm joined today by Senior Conservation Services Manager Brandon Iddings and Iowa Private Lands Coordinator Drew D'Alessandro with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. So Brandon and Drew started off the episode a little bit talking about these conservation practices and specifically oxbows. And Drew, I wanted to start at the very beginning. Could you tell us, please? I have learned a lot about oxbows in the last few years. I had kind of that, just inkling of what an oxbow was, but I've learned so much more from Brandon and others about these and why they are so important. But could you tell us, please, let's start from the big picture. What is an oxbow and why do some of them need to be restored?
Yeah, that's a good question. So an oxbow, what it is basically it's an off-channel wetland habitat that is disconnected or adjacent to an old river. And most of the time, what an oxbow is an old meander of the river that used to be the river. Now, natural processes over time, whether it's flood events, increased flows, things like that, something happens to where that meander gets cut off from the river. And now it's its own kind of standalone habitat feature. And it's, oxbow formation is a natural process. It happens over time. Well, in Iowa, land use practices, straightening streams, things like that, it accelerates that process. And over time, those oxbows start to fill in with sediments. And that's what they're used for. But after a certain point, once they begin to fill in too much or past a certain threshold, they really don't function that well. They don't store water. They don't provide the habitat that, like Fish and Wildlife Service likes to see. They don't cycle the nutrients, provide those water quality benefits. So once it kind of meets that threshold, then we come in and restore it back to its original functioning so that it can provide those ecological benefits.
So it's basically like a house that still has kind of the frame there, but you just need to build it back out.
Exactly. Well put.
And then Brandon, when I, initially thought about these oxbow projects and everything that go into them, and then you had told me about the wildlife benefits. Obviously, there's the environmental benefits and the conservation benefits,
but I didn't necessarily know what the wildlife benefits were. So why are Iowa Soybean Association and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service working together on these projects?
Yeah, so I can kind of dive back into the history of it a little bit more. U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Iowa Natural Heritage Foundation were some of the first folks kind of working on these oxbows all the way back in 2001. Have kind of figured out, and originally they were for the endangered Topeka shiner, little minnow that's found in a couple different watersheds across the state. These minnows really thrive in these off-channel wetlands because larger fish can't get into them. So those Topeka shiners and other small minnows can get in, lay their eggs, reproduce, and then when it floods again, the oxbow connects to the stream and they repopulate the stream. So that was kind of originally why Iowa Soybean Association got involved, and we started working on these in partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife kind of in the 2011, really ramped up here in like 2020, I would say, when we really started diving into, we got a regional conservation partnership program through the USDA. That's when I was first brought on to Iowa Soybean Association, working with Drew and Derek Weisenflew. We did a lot of oxbows in the Boone River watershed, the North Raccoon River watershed. And here in the last 2-3 years, we now have a 28E agreement with Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship that's mainly focused on water quality, and oxbow restorations focused on water quality. And so an oxbow, if you have some tile drainage coming into it, it's treating about 62% of the nitrates coming in. Really successful practice. Most of these oxbows are in non-cropped areas. They're kind of these areas that flood out or just naturally wetter areas. And so difficult to farm or impossible to farm in most cases. So kind of a no-brainer not to do these restorations.
Yeah. So Drew, it sounds like a lot of, common goals, shared goals between the two entities going into restoring oxbows.
Yeah, 100%. I think Brandon nailed it when he mentioned the Topeka shiner as kind of the genesis of oxbow restoration in Iowa, but now it's something completely different. And it kind of speaks to the larger partnership, because oxbow restoration, it speaks to a lot of different values. One thing I like to share, certainly being in Iowa and an ag state, is, if you think about the soil textural triangle, right? Every soil is made up of a certain percentage of sand, silt, and clay. Well, voluntary conservation, take oxbow restoration, is the same thing, but instead of sand, silt, and clay, put a $, legacy, and recreation. Maybe that farm has been in somebody's ownership for 100 years. It was their grandfathers. Like, they care about their legacy. Well, an oxbow restoration works for you, right? Maybe you like to duck hunt. Maybe you like to fish, something like that. Well, an oxbow restoration works for you. That's kind of a legacy landowner. Well, thankfully to Iowa Department of Ag and Land Stewardship, NRCS, some of these other funders that we've had, well, we can actually pay 100% of cost share on these oxbows too. So if the $, if the bottom line is important, well, an oxbow restoration makes sense to you.
In rural Iowa, we know you're sold on your local radio station. The Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network partners with local Iowa stations to deliver the latest in agriculture news, including grain elevator prices, market reports, and ag policy news. Trusted local voices, trusted ag content. This message is brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, where Iowa Ag matters.
Well, that is going to wrap up today's show. Thanks to Mark, thanks to Riley, and of course, thanks to you for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow and take a look at those WASDE numbers and those crop estimates. You're listening to the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. This is Iowa Ag Matters.